Hello and welcome to my video lecture on data warehouse architectures. So up until now we've talked at a fairly high level of why we need a data warehouse and the difference between an operational system and an informational system. Now what we need to do is we need to talk about, well, what does this thing look like? We have different architectures for different needs. We have independent data marts, we have dependent data marts, and operational data stores. We have logical data marts and real-time data warehouses, and we're going to talk about our three-layer architecture. All of these involve some kind of extract, transform, load process, otherwise known as the ETL process. So you need to extract your data from your operational system, transform it in some way, and then load it into your data warehouse. That transformation process is where all of the skill really is involved, because extracting it is really just pulling it out, so you just need to know what you need. But then the transformation, the aggregation, the cleansing that happens in the transformation process, and then once that process is finished, then it's a simple load into the data warehouse. So it's the T that's the big deal. So let's take a look at what an independent data mart looks like. So in this case, we've got our source data systems, and again, that can be, very, very disparate. What happens is we extract the information from all of these disparate data systems, and we move it to a data staging area. And this is where the transformation happens, right? We clean it, we clean the data, we reconcile the data, we derive data. We match data up with existing data, which means we either combine records or we remove duplicates. We go through standardization processes. Again, these are disparate data systems, so this is where we standardize records. This is where the transformation happens. We're going to conform dimensions. We haven't talked about dimensions yet. Relax, we'll talk about that in a little while. And then we export the data to various data marts. So in this case, what happens is these are the silos, right? So we've got our data marts associated with either regional areas, internal areas such as human resources and finance. So we've got all of these data marts. Now, various people are going to need access to various information in these various data marts, which is where some of the security happens. So you can see all these arrows associated with in between the data warehouse, which consists of all these independent data marts, and your end user presentation tools. Right, so now you've got your end users that need to access this data. They need to access the data in all these various independent data marts, which in this diagram are, when you put all of these independent data marts together, they're known as the organization's data warehouse. So this could be the way that your organization or the organization that you belong to may represent its data. It may pull all the data out, put it into data marts that are associated with different areas, and then the end users have to pull information from these different data marts. So the access complexity is very, very high when it comes to this. The complications associated with gathering data from these different data marts is complex. So let's take a look at what a dependent data mart looks like. In this case, we've got the same extraction, we've got the same kind of staging area and the transformation, but now instead of loading into data marts, we're loading into a data warehouse. So then after it's in the data warehouse then performs a function of loading the data once again into dependent data marts. So now in the previous example, the data marts were independent of each other. They were fed data directly. Now what happens is these data marts are dependent on the enterprise's data warehouse to feed them information, hence the difference between independent and dependent. In this case, we're talking about an EDW, an enterprise data warehouse, where all of the data from the extraction and transformation process gets loaded into the EDW first, and then gets dumped into data marts. Again, this makes querying much easier, since for the most part a lot of people are going to go right to the data warehouse or to their individual data marts for query access. Then we get into the logical data mart, where the extraction, the ETL process, or the T and the L process, happens almost synchronously. So we've got, we're pulling our data out into a staging area, and then it goes into a real-time data warehouse. And then what happens is the transformation layer is creating data marts, logical data marts, right? So what's a logical data mart? A logical data mart is a sub area in the data warehouse. So you can see from the graphic, the real-time data warehouse is, you know, either, think of it as a physical machine or a physical set of disks, and then the data is partitioned within the data warehouse. Probably easier to think about it that way. And then from within that one physical location and store of data, you can feed all of your end user presentation requirements from that one location. So let's take a look at the differences. So we've got the data warehouse and we've got our data marts. The scope of a data warehouse is much more broad, whereas a data mart is decentralized by a user area. Then we've got the actual data, where we've got historical, detailed, and summarized data. And you may be sitting there, you know, so it's a combination of the snapshots, which are detailed, and the summaries. And we'll make a distinction of that soon. And then the data in the data mart is most of it's denormalized data because it's simply used for reporting purposes. And again, the data marts are typically dependent. So in that case, they can be highly denormalized because neither one of these needs to be very normalized, because the reason we normalize is to reduce or eliminate update anomalies. And since this is read-only data, we don't need to be normalized because it's not being updated. We don't have to worry about anomalies. So the subjects, the topical part of the data, we're talking about a data warehousing having multiple subjects, and a data mart being central in scope. So that kind of goes back to the scope part of it. The source can be many internal and external sources. The data mart can be few internal or external sources, or it could just be the data warehouse itself. It could only have one source. And then we get into other characteristics. But that ends my video lecture on data warehouse architectures.